Hello, everyone. This is part one of week 8 of Plato, a class on the Protagoras, Phaedo, and Sophist. We continue to talk about the Phaedo, and we continue to talk about this interlude where Socrates talks about his intellectual biography. And I want to look more closely at one dimension of how he describes his interest in causes and explanations. In the secondary literature, it is often said that Socrates is interested in the cause or the explanation of generation and destruction. And that is how it is put in 95, Stephanus page 95. And that is sort of no doubt an important moment in the text. Nevertheless, just a couple of lines later in 96 and then twice again in 97, Socrates puts things a little differently. He says that he wanted to know the diati, the through which or the cause of what becomes, what is destroyed, and what is. So we have a threefold kind of question here, not just asking for the causes of generation and destruction, but also mentioning being, also saying he wanted to understand or to ask what is the cause or the explanation of what is. And given what we studied so far, this may strike us as somehow relevant. It may strike us that, thinking about generation and destruction is one kind of thing. It is concerned with the domain of becoming. But once we talk about the cause or the explanation of what is, maybe that is a different story. And I would like to kind of make a suggestion about this by looking at two of the examples of phenomena that Socrates is interested in. The first is a property that comes up in a lot of Plato's dialogues. Someone is tall or small. So here we talk about Simmias, one of the interlocutors. And we say, how is it that Simmias is tall? And Socrates says that before he kind of complicated things in his own mind by studying, he used to think what presumably other people also think, that a person grows, becomes taller by eating food. But now this no longer seems to him to be the case. Now he thinks that if something or someone is tall, it is tall on account of its relationship to the tall or tallness, or maybe the form of the tall. The second example that I would like to mention is a bit more tricky. Socrates is sort of puzzling about how is it that 1 + 1 is 2? And you might think, how can one possibly be puzzled about this? But the way he is explaining it is, I think, in fact, pointing out that there is a puzzle here. So the thought is, you have 1 here, let's say, you have 1 here. And then you ask yourself, if 1 is added to 1, is it that then this 1 becomes 2, or this 1 becomes 2 when we're putting them together? And now you may kind of indeed find it puzzling. Are we saying that a number becomes something else? A 1 becomes a 2. That doesn't really seem to make sense. And along those lines, Socrates suggests that really what we should be saying is that 2 is 2 on account of its relation to the 2 or 2-ness. And you might think that that is a way of kind of introducing or walking towards the theory of the forms as a theory of how we explain the properties that things have. Something has the property tall on account of its relation to tallness. Something is 2 on account of its relation to the 2. At the same time, you might think maybe that this is somehow supremely uninformative. What do we learn when we say that Simmias is tall on account of his relation to the tall, or that something is good on account of its relation to goodness, or that something is 2 on account of its relation to the 2? But against this instinct that this is kind of just uninformative, I want to suggest that we have indeed made progress. We have identified, as it were, a research project. And the research project is, on the one hand, specifically about these properties that we should be asking, what is two? What is the good? What is tall? More generally speaking, a research project that we should just be interested in properties, maybe distinctions between kinds of properties. And finally, that we should be thinking about the forms.